Thank you, Acting Speaker. We will always put the safety of children first. I listened to this debate with both a heavy heart and a fierce determination to speak up for the most vulnerable members of our community, our children. The Victorian Liberals and Nationals will always put the safety of children first. Not only those children in childcare loved by their families and expecting their educators to have their safety as their first priority, but also for the children in the state's care, vulnerable children who are our most desperate and deserving of our care and protection, not just as a government but as a society. We will, of course, work constructively with the government to pass any legislation and any reform that requires protection laws in Victoria to get strengthened. We will not oppose this bill. In 2022, the Ombudsman said the system protecting children was weak, the weakest in the country. 2022. When she handed down her report highlighting this, we, the Lib Nationals, responded with, a Liberal and National government will urgently amend the Worker Screening Act to implement the Ombudsman's recommendations and give Victoria's children the protection they deserve. They were our words 3 years ago. The Labor government, on the other hand, did not respond. Complete silence. 3 years on, and only when immeasurable harm to children has occurred do we see this government finally act. Despicable acts that should have been avoided, such as predators intending to infect babies with sexually transmitted diseases. Quoting the Ombudsman in 2022, and remember, this is 3 years ago, before these disgusting acts took place, in her summary of the report she said, and I quote, "The biggest remaining gap is the need to amend the Worker Screening Act 2020, Victoria. The Working with Children Check Victoria should be able to act on information that indicates someone poses an unjustifiable risk to the safety of children, regardless of whether criminal charges are brought. Reforms to the legislation are needed to bring Victoria in line with other states and territories and to promote the rights of children and families enshrined in Victoria's Human Rights Charter." Not only did the government failed to respond, when we acted, the Liberal Nationals, out of pure desperation to introduce legislation a month ago, Labor blocked our bill. This would have strengthened the child protection with the Victorian Ombudsman's recommendations embedded within that legislation. That was what was in our bill. Our bill allowed for the Secretary of the Department to remove a Working with Children check immediately if they had reasonable belief there was a chance children's safety would be compromised. Labor's bill today does not. Labor's bill we debate today is weak and does not even address the Ombudsman's recommendation to the government made 3 years ago, does not address them, does not embed them in the bill. It's only because of the recent scandal of alleged child sexual assault in the childcare sector that we have that has pushed Labor to act, to focus on the failures that they were warned of, that Labor was warned of 3 years ago. We heard so much in the last few weeks about the rapid review and that all the recommendations would be acted upon urgently. Well, they're not being. This bill fails to implement the recommendations from the government's own rapid review. Only one recommendation. In the 22 recommendations, only one. This legislation does not address the called-for links to police databases, nor does it address mandatory training called for, but the Premier, in her emotive press conference, even highlighted the importance of mandatory training. But this bill does not address that either. The legislation will not even prevent people like we've heard so much about in Horsham, for example, Ronald Marks, who the media reported was found with child pornography on his phone. He will still be able to hold a Working with Children check. This legislation doesn't even address that. While we will not delay the bill or oppose it, as anything which makes Victorian children even slightly safer is worthwhile, we should take the opportunity to remind the government that their delay of not legislating all the recommendations is still putting children in danger. I will not stand by while children suffer. I will not. I will continue to fight for reform, and I will hold this government to account. This bill is weak. This is not just a failure of policy. It's a failure of leadership, a failure of compassion, a failure to protect. We support the recommendations from the Victorian Ombudsman and always have done so. We have long fought for them. This government has finally been forced to acknowledge the scale of this tragedy and the urgency it demands, but they're not doing enough still. We will be putting forward amendments in the upper house to strengthen this bill, but we will not stand in the way. We will always put the safety of children first.